Alright, now finally this brings me to the moment you've been waiting for, and that's talking about the visuals. Let's start off with the action. Michael Bay is an action maestro. There is no other director quite like him at all. In fact, he's on the top of the list. The only person who can top him is himself. I think in the pre-production process of this movie, they weren't really thinking about, okay, how can we make the story better, but how can we make the action bigger? And that's what you get in this movie. The action is absolutely ridiculously awesome. They made this amazing car chase scene which tops the forest fight in Revenge of the Fallen. It is absolutely amazing. It is a scene that really sticks in your head, and when I came out of the theater, the first thing I really thought about is I want to watch that chase scene again. He really outdid himself this time. I don't know how to describe it. I think it's really high energy action. It just leaves you at the edge of your seat. You don't want to blink. I just think that Michael Bay is like a big kid. When he stages actions, especially the chase scene, they're so creative, and he comes up with these things that you would never expect. So the action is definitely top notch. In the Chicago battle, I felt that the action was cool, but you started seeing more of what flawed the second movie, and that there was too much military involvement. I think that kind of hurt the movie a little bit as a Transformers film. In the chase scene in the middle, which happens in the middle of the movie, you get robots dealing with robots. In the Chicago battle, you just feel that, okay, this is robots against robots, but it seems like the robots are really doing the action in the background, when in fact the human soldiers are really doing the damage. I mean, we had this wingsuit sequence from these base jumpers that was absolutely incredible. It was such a ride for that one scene. It was kind of like the robots had their amazing sequence with the chase scene. The humans have their own amazing sequence with the wingsuit scene. He really brings his brand of action to the table, and you can tell because they're really refreshing types of scenes. However, the fact is that he devoted an entire sequence to humans. At the end of the day, it's still supposed to be a Transformers film. But you know what? I won't complain because it was a really good scene. As for the robot-on-robot action, when it does come to the robot-on-robot action, it is really cool. And then there was this building sequence, which was just so much fun. Like, it was another ride scene where it involves humans trapped on a skyscraper, which is coming down because it is being wrecked by this giant tentacle robot. You can tell that that was a very complicated stunt sequence, and they really put a lot of work into making that scene, and I gotta say hats off to Michael Bay for giving us his brand of action and outdoing himself once again. The freeway sequence and the Chicago sequence, basically the entire action is worth the price of admission alone. Now let's talk about the CG. The CG is ILM's best work. I found that in Revenge of the Fallen, they took a step back, and I think maybe they were rushed because of the writer's strike, but the CG in Revenge of the Fallen could have been better. But I think that ILM really outdid himself. Like, they keep on raising the bar with Michael Bay movies. You had Pearl Harbor, you had Transformers, and now Transformers Dark of the Moon, and the CG is really at the top. You feel that these robots are really there because of the way they're lit. You deal with the shadows, the physical elements, and how they interact with real world objects. It really is believable, and you won't get anything less from them. This movie really raised the bar in terms of CG looking the best it can ever look. And not only do the robots look amazing, but their transformations are just so believable. The transitions from robot to car to robot, it really wows you. ILM did an amazing job. And speaking of visuals, I want to talk about the 3D. The 3D in Avatar is really amazing 3D, but it was very different from that of Dark of the Moon, because the 3D in Avatar, it was presented in a way so that it makes you feel like you're in Pandora. It surrounds you. You feel like you're in the environment. Dark of the Moon, on the other hand, is a different type of 3D. I wouldn't say it's the gimme type of 3D where it throws stuff at you, but it's made to stand out. For example, you really see that background, midground, and foreground is really defined, and the images in 3D are so crisp and so clear, which makes me believe that the 3D in Dark of the Moon is the best 3D ever to put on a feature-length film. Once again, this is a very different 3D from Avatar, but it still is a very amazing 3D experience. When I watch 3D movies, I find that it takes at least 5 minutes for my eyes to adjust. They feel kind of uncomfortable, and you want to take your glasses off and on like that, and just to see, is this 3D? I want to notice, is there a difference? But for me, watching Dark of the Moon, it only took me 5 seconds for my eyes to adjust and really accept the 3D. So I think that the 3D in Dark of the Moon is really the best 3D there is, and you have to watch this movie in 3D to really get the feel for what this movie is all about. Michael Bay, Steven Spielberg, and James Cameron have been pushing this 3D. I feel that they've really earned it with the achievement that is Dark of the Moon. This is a real milestone in CG work, in action, and also in 3D. So definitely watch this movie in 3D. Even though the ticket prices might be higher, it is absolutely worth it. And finally, this brings me to what my overall score of this movie is. I talked about the story, I talked about the characters, I talked about the acting, the editing, pacing, humor, direction, visuals, the 3D, and the action. At the end of the day, we gotta remember that this is a Michael Bay movie, and once you watch enough Michael Bay movies, you feel that it can't be judged on the same level as other movies, because I don't know, the way the movies are filmed and the storytelling is done in a very different way, and a lot of people have been saying that he puts action before story and characters. I'm gonna have to agree with that because the action overtook the story and the characters. And what makes a really great movie is that you have great stories and great characters. The action is really just a tool to move the story along. But in this one, it wasn't like that. You got more action than you got story and character. So I was trying to actually review this movie as a movie and the foundations of what makes a great movie. So that's why it's very hard for me to give this movie a near perfect score, because I have to review this movie as a movie. Let's say if I were to compare it to Iron Man, for example. Iron Man had all the elements of a great movie in terms of storytelling. Dark of the Moon was about big action. It was just about how to make the action bigger and more unique and more exciting and more creative. And we got that. And so does that mean that I should have to overlook everything else and then just score the movie just on the action alone? Like, it's a bit hard to score it that way. But does that also mean that I have to score this movie comparing it to other Michael Bay films? Well, let me put it this way. I gave Transformers, the very first one, an 8.5 out of 10. Revenge of the Fallen gets a 6 out of 10. I wasn't too crazy about it as an overall movie. I'm gonna have to give Transformers Dark of the Moon a 7.75 out of 10. I was thinking about giving it an 8, but I feel it's too close to what I gave Transformers, the very first movie. So I'm gonna give it a 7.75. I give most above average movies a 7 or a 7.5, but I feel this movie is above that. But it doesn't have that great story that the first one had. The first one had a lot of heart and soul. I feel that the third one is still more about the action, and it overtook the story. I came out of the theater just going, wow, crazy, awesome, amazing, incredible action, but I didn't really have a whole lot to say about the story because the action did overtake the story. And like I said, once again, the foundation of an amazing movie is great stories, great characters, and the action is a tool to help move the story along. And it shouldn't be the other way around. But for Michael Bay films, it's the other way around. That's the score I give for Transformers Dark of the Moon. Watch it in 3D. Watch it again if you already seen it. I think that you're not gonna have a better time than watching it on the big screen in 3D. This is Alex Yu, and thanks for watching the Ragin Ronin review. Peace.